Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you've ever been part of a team tasked with upgrading legacy systems, you know exactly how high the stakes can get. It is a true moment of truth for any organization, literally a cliffhanger where the whole shebang is on the line. You've spent months, maybe even years, designing and testing a brand new architecture, and now comes the most daunting part of all, actually crossing over to it. Today, we're going to break down the mechanics of system implementation.
Okay, let's dive into this. System implementation is essentially building a transition bridge. You're moving from that archaic, gray, analog landscape over to a highly connected digital cityscape. And, a newly developed and tested computer system isn't just a switch you can blindly flip. It must be strategically installed and integrated into active use without everything collapsing into the canyon below. To navigate this, we're going to follow a very clear roadmap. First, the transition bridge. Second, essential system preparation. Third, 4 strategies for changeover. Fourth, balancing risk and cost. And finally, crossing to the new system. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the transition bridge, moving from old to new. Think of implementation not just as, unboxing some shiny new software. It is the final, absolutely critical stage in the system's life cycle. It's where a newly developed and tested computer system is finally installed and put into active use. And I really want to emphasize that word, integrated. The system doesn't operate in a vacuum, right? It has to mesh with the daily reality of your business. It's a massive strategic crossover event. Moving right along to Section 2, essential system preparation. Laying the groundwork. The whole architecture of implementation breaks down into 3 core phases. Preparation to get your people and data ready, selection to choose your changeover method, and action to finally go live. Right now, we're going to zero in on that completely vital first phase, preparation. Because before any system can launch, it rests on 2 massive mandatory pillars. First up, staff training. Your employees literally have to be taught how to operate both the new software and the new hardware. Because if they don't know how to use it, well, the system basically doesn't work. The second pillar is data transfer. All your old files, whether they're sitting in some dusty paper archive or living in an ancient electronic database, must be successfully moved over into the new system. So how exactly do we accomplish that data transfer? Well, there are 3 primary methods to migrate existing records. The first is scanning, where you're converting physical paper documents directly into digital formats. The second is keying in, which is exactly as tedious as it sounds, having your staff manually type existing data right into the new system interfaces. And the third is downloading, which means directly migrating existing electronic files straight into the new database architecture. And this brilliantly illustrates the core challenge. Whether you're scanning, keying in, or downloading, all of those efforts must successfully point into that pristine new database before you can even think about going live. Seriously, if you launch without all your data, you're just launching an empty shell. That brings us to Section 3, 4 strategies for changeover. Choosing your method.
Okay, so there are 4 primary ways to switch from an old system to a new one, and every single one represents a completely different strategic trade-off. It's like you're always tweaking 3 key variables: cost, time, and risk. The optimal choice? Well, that depends entirely on your organization's appetite for risk versus its budget for time and labor. Let's dig into each of these 4 toolboxes. First up is direct changeover. The mechanics here are brutal but highly effective. The old system stops overnight, and the new system starts immediately. It's a hard, fast cut. The primary pro here is that you get immediate benefits, and it is absolutely the cheapest method because you're only ever paying 1 set of staff. The con? It's incredibly risky. It is disastrous if the new system fails because you have 0 backup. So this is really best for small systems or situations where the old system is completely broken anyway. So the crucial point is, what if you simply cannot afford a disastrous failure? That brings us to our second method, parallel running. Here, both the old and new systems run simultaneously for a set concurrent period. Data is literally entered into both systems twice. The major pro is that this is the safest possible method. The old system remains fully active as a fail-safe backup. But the con is massive. It's exceedingly expensive and time-consuming because you're duplicating your staff's workload entirely. This is the ideal scenario for critical systems, think banking, where errors or downtime are completely unacceptable. Now, if parallel running is just too expensive, a great geographic compromise is pilot running. The new system is introduced perfectly into one single branch or office first, and then, once it's totally proven, rolled out company-wide. The pro is that your total network risk is limited to just that one branch, and it allows for highly focused small group staff training. The con, of course, is that if a failure does happen, the operational capacity of that specific pilot branch is still compromised. But this is absolutely perfect for organizations with lots of identical physical locations, like a massive supermarket chain.
Finally, we have phased implementation. This is where the system is introduced one distinct part or module at a time. It's kind of like building a staircase. The major pro is that it allows for really easy, granular evaluation of each small stage. If a module fails, it only affects that specific function, not the whole entire company. The con, however, is that this is a remarkably slow process. Every individual part requires full testing before the next can advance. The ideal scenario here is large, complex architectures, like a school migrating attendance first, then weighting, then migrating grades, and finally report cards.
Let's move to and see how this builds into a bigger picture. Synthesizing all of this, it's super clear there are no perfect answers, only trade-offs. Direct gives you low cost but disastrous failure risk. Parallel gives you a complete backup but expensive double work. Pilot offers an isolated failure radius but localized disruption. And phased provides granular evaluation but suffers from a very slow timeline.
All right, moving into Section 4, balancing risk and cost, the ultimate trade-off. When we contrast the two extreme ends of this spectrum, the inherent organizational friction becomes completely obvious. On one side, direct changeover is the absolute cheapest method, but you carry that disastrous failure risk. On the exact opposite side, parallel running is the safest possible method, but it is exceedingly expensive and time-consuming. You're basically fighting an eternal war between the finance department, who wants to save money, and the operations department, who demands total stability.
Now, what's really interesting about this spectrum is the inverse correlation. Think about operational risk on one side and cost and effort on the other. Risk and cost are totally inversely correlated. Direct is high risk, low cost. Parallel is low risk, high cost. Pilot and phased sit right there in the middle as reliable compromises. The golden rule of system implementation is simply this. You can optimize for one, but you absolutely must pay for the other.
And finally, Section 5, crossing to the new system, making the transition. This brings us right back to our transition bridge. Once all that preparation is complete and a specific method is chosen, the focus shifts entirely to execution. Remember, there is no universally perfect implementation method out there. There's only the right strategic fit for your organization's specific constraints. You just have to protect the data, trust the training, and execute the changeover with absolute confidence.
Because ultimately, system implementation isn't just some IT challenge. It is a profound business decision. So when you're facing your next major upgrade, how will you balance your organization's appetite for risk against its budget constraints to successfully cross that transition bridge? Thanks for tuning into this explainer.